Hey everybody, Lieutenant Joe here for the Hope is Not a Tactic school safety and security show, but really it's for all facilities. Any place people gather, you can use the tips and the information we have here in this program to make your facility safe in a day and age when that's everyone's responsibility. So today we're going to talk a little bit about a threat, vulnerability, and risk assessment, what goes into it, what you need to know about it, and how you can do it yourself if you have to. Just so you know, these are things that I do. I go out and I do threat assessments professionally. I go out and I look at all these facilities and write a very detailed report and give you a roadmap to make your facility safer. But sometimes people need to do it on their own. That's all they can afford, and that's fine. But you need to do it the right way, and that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. All right, first I'm going to thank our sponsors, Blue360Media.com, the greatest publishers of all things law enforcement, and coming soon, all things school safety and security, and Lieutenant Joe is going to be involved in that. So we're going to have books and video training and all kinds of things. Blue360Media.com. Our other sponsor is MedicalEssentialDiagnostics.com. They are located in New Jersey and they operate in New Jersey right now. They are a full health screening company. So if you work for any government entity at all in the state of New Jersey, you and two adults can go to any one of their 6 facilities located throughout the state and get a no cost to you health screening for you and 2 family members. The whole idea here is to catch something early before it hurts you. So MedicalEssentialDiagnostics.com. They're your friend and they're my friend and they're a friend of the program. So I want to thank them and Blue360 Media. All right, so what is a threat, vulnerability, and risk assessment? I'm sure we've all heard of it by now. Some people in some states do more than other states. Everyone needs to do a threat, vulnerability, and risk assessment of their facility, no matter what it is, whether you're a warehouse, a business, a religious facility, a summer camp, or a school. We need to understand our vulnerabilities and how someone could hurt us so that we can close any security gaps and make our facilities safe. That's the idea of a threat, vulnerability, and risk assessment. Now, in our modern times, one of the things that I go all across the country and do these. So recently I was in California doing a threat assessment for a school district out in California, and they have the concerns of active shooters and violence like every school has, but they also have some unique things like landslides and forest fires and earthquakes, right? So it depends on where you are. You need to have an all hazards threat, vulnerability, and risk assessment, an AHTVRA, where you understand, it might not be an active shooter, but if there's an earthquake and half your school building comes down, or a tornado in the Midwest and it's dangerous, what can you do to prepare and survive? Right? So that's an AHTVRA, and that's what you need to start thinking about. All right, so a TVRA, the way I conduct them, I am a member of PASS K-12. Which is a school safety partnership for school safety organization. They're amazing. And what I do is I use their tier system and my own combined to come up with a list of over 120 things we look at a facility to see if it's best practices are being done, if it's safe and secure, if the equipment is right, if the processes are correct, the protocols, etc. So that's an awful lot of things to look at. So for most people, when I ask them, what a threat assessment is, they say, yeah, you check the doors and windows. And that's true, but that's not it. There are, at least 118 other things you should be looking at. So this is not going to be the full Monty, as they say here. I'm going to give you some ideas of some basic things you can do. You can reach out to me and email me, and I will send you some material. I've written lots and lots of articles. I'm on Campus Safety Magazine's Board of Experts. I am a subject matter expert for the PASS K-12 organization. So I do a lot of on-the-ground work in this type of an environment. So I have a lot of information to offer you to help you. So what's the second thing that I do? Not only do I use this very exhaustive list of things to look at, I look at every building from the point of view, if I wanted to get in there and hurt the people that are in your building, how could I do it? So the first thing we have to understand is internal threats and external threats. An internal threat is someone we let into our buildings. These are our students, our staff, our teachers, our delivery people, all those kind of people. The people we let in, those are internal threats. Visitors that come that we buzz and let them in the door. Now they're in the building. External threats are people that we're not allowing access to our facility. These are the people that want to come and attack us specifically. They show up and they try and bash through the glass or shoot through the glass, and they try and get into your facility, into your school, to hurt people, right? So you have interior threats and exterior threats. If we do things right with our assessment, there's it's possible to secure yourself against both internal and external threats. Okay. So the first thing I look at is, how do I get in your facility? Now, most people who have conducted active shooter events come through the front door or the back door. So the big thing we talk about here is time equals life, right? The more time you have to see approaching danger, the more time you have to respond to it, to react to it, the better chances of survival you're going to have. So I've done another program here on approaching danger. You should go watch that episode. It's very helpful, especially when it comes to understanding time equals life. And so what do I look at? Well, let's look at a couple of facilities. Let's look at the Sandy Hook school, this terrible tragedy at Sandy Hook. They locked their doors. They practiced doing lockdowns, but they didn't have protected glass, right? So the shooter walked up to the front door. The door was locked, and he fired a couple of rounds from his rifle. The glass dropped, and he was in the building instantaneously. So we look at approaches. How do people get into your facility? Now, we know that there shouldn't be, doors should not be left unlocked, like in Uvalde. It wasn't a propped door by a teacher. There were 3 unlocked doors in the back of the school that were left unlocked, and the shooter walked right into the school. So we can't have unlocked doors. Now you say, well, Lieutenant Joe, of course, everybody knows that. Let me tell you, I go all across the country doing these assessments, and I do find schools to this day leave their doors unlocked. And I say, why would you leave your doors unlocked? And they say, well, the parents don't want to feel like it's a prison. The administration wants to let people feel comfortable coming and going. And I say, well, that's very nice. We can make welcoming, loving, warm environments in our facilities, but we should lock the door and we should know who's coming in. Doesn't that make sense? Don't you lock your door at your house at night? And if you don't, you should, right? But why would you do that? So that people can't just walk in and hurt you. Same thing at our facility. So we have to make sure our doors and windows are locked. So when I go to a school, the first thing I look at is I watch in the morning. I get there before anybody else does. And I do what we call Lieutenant Joe's coffee walk. I walk around the building looking to see if there are open doors and windows. That even before the custodians get there, I get there very, very early. And very often, in almost every school district, I find some doors and windows that were left open the night before, that were not locked properly, and I can find my way inside the school and be waiting there when everyone gets there. And that's not good. So you have to make sure your doors and windows are locked. So what can you do about protecting your glass? There is a material called window safety glazing, and it's a clear film. It can also come in reflective, or you can put your school symbols on it, whatever. But mostly it's a clear film that's applied to your windows and then caulked to the metal frames. And what this does is, while you can shoot through it, the glass does not drop. It stays in place, right? Someone my size, I'm a big guy, I'm 225 pounds, right? If I took a 20-pound sledgehammer and I went at that glass, it would take me 2 to 3 minutes to knock that glass out of the frame. That 2 to 3 minutes buys you the time you need to know something bad is happening. We better lock down or evacuate or whatever we're going to do. Time equals life. So that buys you some time. So I look at your school from the point of view of someone who wants to hurt you. So I do my morning walk to see if there's ways to get in. Then I will often show up unannounced and see if somebody will let me in, right? This is penetration testing. We went to a big school district in New York, and I had one of my staff members. She is a 30-year-old young woman. She looks very, very young. We put her in a hoodie and a backpack, and she walked up to the door, knocked on the door at 10 o'clock in the morning. A security guard answered the door, and she said, "Oh, hi, what are you doing?" "I forgot my ID." And he let her in the building. Didn't ask who she was, didn't ask for anything else, let her right in the building. I will often go up in a suit and tie and I knock on a side door, and teachers will let me in, not knowing who I am because I'm in a suit and tie. I've done other experiments where I go in, I have jeans and a raggedy jacket, and that might slow them down. You have to go to the front office, right? So we look at messaging. How could I get in if I wanted to? A big vulnerability I find is delivery trucks. You know, these delivery trucks that bring the food, they bring the books, they bring all kinds of things. I've seen people pull up, ring the bell, somebody comes from inside, opens the door, helps them carry this stuff in, and then they walk away and leave the door unlocked and open. And I've walked right in behind them and videotaped the whole thing and brought it right to the principal. Look, your doors are left open. It's a vulnerability. So when you do this, you want to look at it from the point of view of if somebody wanted to get in here to hurt us, how would they do it? An external threat, right? An external threat, somebody coming from the outside to get in at you. So glaze, safety glaze, where do you start? Front door and the side light windows. Then your back doors. Then eventually you budget to do all the first floor windows so that it has this protective material on it. All right. You want to look at and see what kind of cameras do you have? Do you have old analog cameras that you can't really make out what's going on? Do you have new modern cameras? And one of the things I find, a lot of school districts spend a lot of money on cameras. They do. They spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on cameras that can look at every part of their school district. But they don't have anybody watching them all the time. They go back and use them as evidence gathering devices. And we don't want that, right? You want to have a SOC, right? A security operations center where you have somebody monitoring your camera so they can see someone pulling up, getting out of a car with a weapon and coming towards your building. And then they can take action, lock you down, call the police, whatever. So when we look at all these kind of things, we look at your equipment. Is your equipment out of date? Do you have enough cameras? Do you have all areas of your exterior covered so that you can see the playgrounds, the fields, the sports fields, the arrival where the buses come and go, and all the sides of your building? Do you have internal cameras? And I know some people they don't want internal, we don't want them watching our kids. Well, the reality is if somebody gets into your school or an internal threat starts and somebody in a classroom pulls a gun and starts shooting, you want to be able to see what's going on inside that school. The police need to see what's going on inside that school. So it's not about privacy issues. The cops are not going to be looking at the cameras to see if somebody has a marijuana cigarette. They don't care about that. The only thing they're going to worry about is when there is violence in the school. They can see where it is, who's doing it, and they can guide their officers to save lives. So your equipment is very, very important. You want to look at all that. Where do you lock down, right? Where do you lock down? Do you lock down? Do you have safety corners in your classrooms? Do you have window covers for your classroom doors, right? So that they can't see. Do your locks have to be key locked from the hallway to secure the door, or do they lock internally, right? With a big thumb brake kind of a lock. You want to understand all these kind of different things. Where do you lock down in the gym? I see lots of Can you know those big push bar doors, the big push bar doors? How do you secure those in your cafeterias, maybe your theaters, if you have a theater in the school, and your gyms? How do you lock them? Does a custodian have to come down with a key in the hallway and lock? And you think they're going to do that when there's a shooting going on? So you can have an unprotected area. So there are things you can put. You can put the door in the lock position, put the strap around the bar, and in an emergency, anybody, even a student, just pulls the strap, the throw pops into the lock, and the door is secure. So I know libraries have those as well, right? So you want to look at those kind of things. Your communications. Who's allowed to call a lockdown in your school? Who's allowed to do it? I talk to lots and lots of schools, and I'll hear an administrator say, anybody in this building can call a lockdown if they see danger. And then I ask the teachers and the custodians and everybody, and I'm not allowed to call a lockdown. I have to call the office. Some people say, I'm allowed to do it. I just don't know how. Other people say, well, I'm supposed to use the PA, but I don't know how to use the PA, right? So all of these little things that we look at, we have to understand. If you have a policy and a procedure, you expect people to do things. You have to train. They have to practice doing it. You have to make sure your messaging is clear, right? So we do look at doors and windows. Are they safe? Are they in good condition? Do they actually close? You know how many schools I go to that people will tell me, we've reported that door 15 times and nobody has fixed it because it closes, but it doesn't latch shut and anybody can walk in, right? So we look at that, our cameras, our staff training. Do you do realistic drills, right? So we have three episodes here on our podcast that cover running drills of value. You should go watch that, right? And it tells you how to run drills of real value to actually add safety and security to your facility, right? Your protocols. Are you doing best practices? When you do a realistic drill, it doesn't have to be traumatizing, but it should add some realism. People should have to react as they would in a real event. You know, where would they lock down in that gym if they can get the door locked? Do they go into the locker room? Do they stay in the big part of the gym? When should you flee the building? When should you decide it's time to go? What do you do if you have students and staff and teachers and kids and everybody out on the field and there's a shooting in the building? Where would those people go to that are outside? Where would they flee to? Do you have rally points set up in advance? Places where people could go and be met by law enforcement and buses maybe to take them to safety. So you want to see, maybe you have trails that get out to the neighborhood. Are they clear? So there's no foot obstructions, right? All those kind of things you want to look at it. Imagine a scenario. Run a tabletop with your team and say, okay, 10 o'clock in the morning, gunfire erupts in the cafeteria. What would we be doing right now, right? Do that what if tabletop. I have an electronic one called Sim Tactics, where we program a scenario into everybody's computer from your office. You jump online and the scenario takes off. There's video clips, there's phone calls, there's communication between everybody. You have to react in real time to an event taking place, as opposed to pencil and paper tabletop. All right. Invite law enforcement to come and see what you're doing. Invite them to walk around your buildings, right? I know where I was law enforcement officer, not every officer was from the town and went to the high school. So if they were to call up and say, hey, there's a shooting in the science wing, half the officers did not know where the science wing was. So what did I do? Hey, stop at the school once in a while, walk around. The school would come on in. They put coffee pots everywhere. Cops love coffee. Come in and have coffee. So they'd walk around the school. They'd know the school in advance. Number your buildings, right? Or we use the firemen's A, B, C, and D. So each side of your building is labeled, and then each window should have a number. So you could say, we need help in B37. Now when the officers are coming, they're not trying to figure out where the science wing is. They're going to the B side of the building and looking for window 37. That's where the trouble is, right? It speeds it up. Time equals life. All right, so these are the kind of things you need to look at. That scenario thought in your head. If somebody tried to get in, how would they get in? How would we repel them? Where would we lock down? How fast can we lock down? How good are our drills? You know, these are all things that are going to help you survive a violent incident. Then think about the internal threat. A student takes a gun out of a backpack and starts shooting, or takes a gun out of a locker and starts shooting. Where is everyone going to go? Where are they going to lock down? Do you stay or do you flee? How do you lock your doors? Do you cover your windows? Do you have safety corners? What would you do? Realistic scenarios. So I have these things for you, right? All you have to do is email me, Joe@Pangaro Training, Joe@Pangaro Training, and I will send you some of this material. All right, so that's a quick look at a threat vulnerability risk assessment. When you add the AH part, you have to consider, do you live in an area with tornadoes? Do you have places everyone would go if a tornado popped up? Do you have landslides or earthquake protection? Do you have rooms? Where would you flee? You add in that real world, physical world, the environment, into your threat assessment to figure out how you would move along and what you would do to protect everybody from that kind of a threat as well. So the idea of an assessment, a threat assessment, is a great big 30,000-foot view of your facility, your school, your business, your church, and then all the way down to the most minute things of safety and security. All right. So one of our next programs, we're going to talk about the 3 pillars of survival plus 1, and this is going to help put it all together for you to give you things to think about. So tune in for that one as well. All right. Remember, Joe@PangaroTraining.com, and reach out. I have all kinds of material for you. Tell your friends about this show, like and follow it, and we're going to try and keep every facility safe. This is Lieutenant Joe for Hope is Not a Tactic. Be safe, be secure, be empowered to help everyone enjoy the facility and to be safe.